A very good afternoon to you, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this media briefing. As you know, we are preparing for the resumption of face-to-face classes, so we will hear from the Minister of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Honorable K. McConney, the Chief Medical Officer, the Most Honorable Dr. Kenneth George, the Chief Education Officer, Dr. Ramona Archer-Bradshaw, and we're also joined by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, Ms. Betty Alleyne-Headley, as well as the Director of the Education Technical Management Unit, Mr. Francisco Miller. And Minister McConney will begin.
Good afternoon, Barbados. Good afternoon, Barbados. The return to face-to-face school has been on the minds and on the lips and in the frontal focus for this entire country and, of course, for the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training for some time. Students, our principals, our teachers and staff, our parents and guardians, we have been waiting a long time for school to reopen, for playgrounds to be noisy and trampled by the feet of happy children, and for parents to get out to work and catch back their hand and their stride in their households. Now, as Barbados starts to reopen fully for business at every level and with full engagement, respecting COVID-19 protocols, of course, we are seeking to do the same with our schools. Our children must not be left out, nor left to lag further behind in their learning journey. We aim to provide as many students as possible, as soon as possible, the opportunity to benefit from face-to-face learning environment with due care given to the safety and responsibility under the guidance of our Ministry of Health and Wellness. You may recall that the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, we signaled our intention to work with our education partners towards the return to face-to-face school on February 21st this year. That's next week. During the past week, our team and I at the ministry have intensified our engagement with our partners to consider the best way forward. Now, bearing in mind that this engagement did not just begin. Since last year, this ministry has been in discussions and have been charting a course forward and developing a roadmap in collaboration with our educational partners. We met with the principals of public and private schools. We met with the teachers of public and private schools. We met with the Barbados Secondary Teachers Union. We met with the National Union of Public Workers. We met with the Association of Principals of Primary Schools, with the Barbados Association of Principals of Public Secondary Schools, with the National Council of Parent-Teacher Associations. And in some ways, we've met informally and casually in some ways with some of our students. Meetings were also held with ministries of health and wellness, with the Transport Board, with donor agencies such as the Pan American Health Organization, UNICEF, and USAID. The Ministry of Labor and Social Partnership Relations, they conducted sensitizations with the health and safety committees of all of our schools. Meetings were held with auxiliary staff and school monitors with the Ministry of Health and Wellness on cleaning and sanitizing protocols, and that training will continue. Meetings were also held with the Ministry of People Empowerment and the Barbados Light and Power to discuss the vulnerable students who reside in locations without electricity. A new roadmap was developed with our stakeholder, our educational partners consultation, which details the proposal for the safe reopening of schools, who will return to school, the mode of instruction in online learning, the mode of instruction for blended learning, the mode of instruction for face-to-face, the protocols for sick students and members of the education community, and the roles and responsibilities of our key educational partners. You will certainly hear more about this roadmap from the Chief Education Officer, Dr. Archer-Bradshaw, later, And if you check the Ministry of Education's Facebook and IG pages, you should be able to see a draft of that roadmap. Now, our ministry and this government, we have listened. We have listened. We have heard, we have discussed, we have evaluated our options. We are responding. And we now need to continuously improve our communication with you, the public of Barbados. I committed to this country about 10 days ago when I made my first statement as minister responsible for education that the Ministry of Education's team would hold consultations and we would get back to you. So we are now here to update the country on the accelerated progress towards our February 21st ambition. As we update and outline plans to you, please accept that the transition back to face-to-face school may not be perfect. As humans, we were designed to learn while in motion, and we therefore have to move with that certain knowledge into this face-to-face experience and bring with us certainly a can-do attitude and a mindset for growth that says we will step bravely into face-to-face. We will monitor and we will observe. We will learn and we will adjust for success as we go along. We know that the size of the student body populations in our various schools are different from school to school. We also know that the physical size of school plants and their relative capacity in terms of space to accommodate classrooms with 3-foot distancing, that varies from school to school. We are aware that some of the repairs ongoing at schools can be done safely and in a manner that is environmentally healthy for people without disrupting classes while students are in school, while some repairs would have to be done when the students are out of school or at an alternative location. The Permanent Secretary and Mr. Francisco Miller, who heads the department that has responsibility for the minor and major repairs, you will hear from them later on the readiness of our school's infrastructure in terms of those repairs. Those educational partners who have indicated that you will not be able to start on February 21st for various reasons you've proffered, we have heard you. And those education partners who have indicated that you are ready and willing to try a start on February 21st, we too have heard you. We appreciate that some people are experiencing anxiety about returning to face-to-face school for various reasons equally legitimate for your circumstance. To support the former, that is, to support those who are experiencing that anxiety, the ministry has augmented our effort to strengthen the Student Support Services Unit. For example, we have engaged 7 additional primary school social workers and 7 counselors for secondary schools. These officers have started work with students and teachers at several schools to prepare them for the return to face-to-face classes. In addition, there are 6 primary school counselors supported by the Sandy Lane Charitable Trust. Several sessions were also organized for teachers of schools that were used as isolation centers and with other teachers as well. A mental health and wellness committee set up last year has met several times and has developed a plan to support the psychosocial needs of school personnel. In all of this, the ministry is mindful that some of our Barbadian students have to take the same external exams, including CSEC and CAPE, at the same time as others in the region. And their counterparts in the region are already in significant part back to face-to-face school, benefiting and advancing in ways that our Barbadian students would also like to benefit and advance. My informal conversations with students bear out this concern, and their perspective must also be taken into consideration. We are also mindful that our students must get going sooner rather than later on subjects which require practical work submissions for them to demonstrate proficiency and excellence in various assessments and exams. Our children will not only be required to compete with others in Barbados and the region for opportunities in education at all levels, they will be competing with peers from around the world who will be seeking to land spots in universities and colleges and special schools and jobs for the future. They must be ready. And can we afford to hold them back any longer than the years they have already lost in learning gains through no fault of their own or ours? We have to rebalance our priorities, Barbados, now, if this country is to survive and thrive. For these reasons, among others, the ministry has determined that schools will reopen in a phased manner starting February 21st. Our Chief Medical Officer is here and will share the Ministry of Health and Wellness's rationale for advising us in a way that they believe is sound as it relates to the reopening of school. Our Chief Education Officer, as I mentioned earlier, is also here to share further details on how we will be able to return to school, face-to-face school, in a safe manner using the roadmap and other approaches that have been advanced. Our Permanent Secretary, Ms. Betty Alleyne-Headley, she will hear and she will answer, as well as with Mr. Miller, Mr. Francisco Miller, to whom I referred earlier, about the readiness of our school plans. I want to thank you, Barbados. Thank you for making this transition back to face-to-face school with us in the interest of quality education for all. We can do this. Remember, we were designed to learn while in motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Dr. Archer-Bradshaw will now provide an update as well.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Barbados. I support fully the comments made by our Honorable Minister of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Honorable K. McConney. I want to begin by thanking the team at the Ministry of Education, the team that worked so hard on developing the roadmap that we have today. I am also very grateful to the many stakeholders, the principals associations, the various unions, the teachers, the parents, for sharing their very diverse views, of course causing us to rethink our approaches in many instances. Because of the collaboration, we are able to have today not a final roadmap, but a draft that we have shared on our Instagram and Facebook pages. This roadmap has three main objectives. The first, it describes our plans for the safe, effective, and efficient reopening of schools. Secondly, it sensitizes all of our partners in education about the requirements for this safe return. Thirdly, it identifies the roles and responsibilities of our key stakeholders to ensure the safe operation of schools during this pandemic. I'm going to use this opportunity to speak about the requirements for the safe reopening of schools. And there are four main requirements at this point in time. In terms of distancing, we are saying that all students in classrooms should be seated 3 feet apart. All students should follow the COVID-19 protocols and be 3 feet apart at all times. In terms of mask wearing, all students are required to wear masks at all times. Of course, allowances will be made for mask breaks. Sanitizing stations are also a requirement, and this is across all levels from nursery to secondary. We also want to conduct random testing for students and for staff across nursery, primary, and secondary schools. I must say at this time that the random testing will not occur during the first week or the second week. We are awaiting the swabs, and as soon as we receive the swabs and training has taken place, the random testing will occur. For students, we require parental consent, and the parental consent forms will be made available. You may be wondering who will return to school and when. As the minister said, students will generally return to school in 2 phases. To determine who returned to school in the first phase, we identified those children who are most vulnerable at this stage. We identified the nursery, reception, infants A and infants B students, because these students are unable to self-regulate and are unable to navigate devices on their own. They need the support of adults in the online environment. Class 4 students, they need to be able to transition successfully to the secondary school. As a result, they need to experience as much face-to-face instruction as they can. They need to develop their social skills. First formers, they too need the opportunity to experience the culture of their new secondary school. And one of the cries that we heard throughout this pandemic with the first form that went into school in September 2020 was that the children, some of them, did not feel connected to their secondary school because the only experience they had of their school was that of being online. 4th, 5th, and 6th formers, there is a need for them to participate in practical activities, especially those who are pursuing examinations and are required to submit their school-based assessments. And we cannot forget those children who have special needs. They need that face-to-face interaction in order to reach their cognitive and developmental milestones. The groups that I have just listed are the groups that will be in the first phase. In the second phase, we will have at the primary level classes 1, 2, and 3, and at the secondary level, second form and third form. I want to say at this point that we will allow for flexibility relative to the phases based on a few factors. We understand that there are some schools that are unable to have all of the students in the first phase at school in the first week. Where that is happening, we are recommending that the principals utilize a Group A and a Group B approach, which allows for children to have at least 5 days of face-to-face school within a 2-week period. What do I mean when I say that? A student in Group A may go to school for, when I say go to school, I'm talking about face-to-face school for 3 days in the first week, and they may have online for the other 2 days in that first week. In the second week, that same student in Group A may have 2 days of face-to-face instruction and the other 3 days online. In essence, that amounts to 5 days in a 2-week period. We at the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training understands that not all schools have the same constraints. There are some schools that can have all of the cohorts in phase 1 on the plant while following the COVID-19 protocols. Where that is so, we allow the flexibility of that school to bring in the phases based on their capacity. In terms of the closure of schools, the general time for school closure will be 2 p.m. We know that there are some schools, for example, the St. Leonard's Boys School and the St. Michael's School, that begin a little earlier than the others. That will be allowed. As a result, they will be allowed to close a little earlier than 2 o'clock. There are also some schools that may want to run a little longer than 2 o'clock. They may want to go until 2:30 or until 3 p.m., depending on the educational needs of the students. Where that is so, the principals will communicate with you, the parents and the guardians, so that you will know exactly the time to pick up your child or the time to expect your child at home if that child has to take public transportation. I want to use this opportunity to talk specifically with parents. Parents, I want you to know that we at the ministry, our principals, our teachers, our support staff have done all that we can do and will do all that we can do to make it safe for your child at school. We are depending on you to help us to keep it safe for your child or ward at school. And what do I mean when I say this? We know that there are some parents who may know that their child is not feeling well and may decide to send the child to school anyway. Parents, if we want to open schools safely and keep schools safe, you have the responsibility of ensuring that your child does not become the agent in the school for transmission. It cannot work if we do not have your support. It cannot work if we do not have your support. At this point, I am going to hand over to Miss Lisa Lord, who will tell us who will speak after me. So thank you very much, Barbados.
Thank you very much. And from the Chief Education Officer, we now go to the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. George.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. I'll be fairly brief. Thanks a lot, Barbadians, for working with us during this difficult time. The Ministry of Health is supportive of schools returning on the 21st of February 2022 in a phased approach. I would like the public to know that transmission in schools is an unlikely event. Transmission is more likely to occur in your homes, where people socialize and where people live. Based on the protocols, the Ministry of Health strongly believes that schools are relatively safe environments for learning. And once the protocols are adhered to, there shall be no mass spread of COVID or Omicron for that matter in schools. Fortunately, we have gotten support not only from PAHO in our decision making, WHO in our decision making, UNICEF in our decision making, but also we managed to get the perspective of a large group of pediatricians in Barbados who are highly supportive of this approach. The second issue, if your child or teacher, for that matter, is ill, they are to remain at home. This may sound simple, but this, to me, is our greatest threat if we allow sick students onto the school plant. I think if we stick to these measures, the likelihood of transmission in schools has been reduced. And my final point is that the Ministry of Health has given its commitment to walk this walk with the Ministry of Education. Our medical officers of health have been briefed. They, I would say, many of them are actually quite experienced in managing introduction of COVID into schools. And I can assure you this can be done safely. We need your cooperation. And with that, I turn over back to Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. George. As customary at this time, I would just ask members of the media to identify themselves and the media house they represent. And just to remind you that also joining us are the PS in the Ministry of Education, Ms. Betty Alleyne-Headley, and the Director of Education Technical Management Unit, Mr. Francisco Miller. Your questions? Members of the media, do you have any questions? In the Ministry of Education.
Hi. Hi, good afternoon, Lisa. Kobe Brooms here from Barbados today. Just one question to the minister. I know that the Barbados Union of Teachers would have asked for an extension to about March for the resumption of face-to-face classes. Is this an indication then that we have the support of the union for the phased approach for February 21st?
Thank you very much for that question. What we have done is determine that we will go back on the 21st. However, there is flexibility for those principals in those schools which have a challenge with regards to either capacity or the ability for various reasons for them to go back to school earlier at that time or at a different time, they are to inform the ministry. You would have heard the Chief Education Officer say that while we are officially going back on February 21st, there are certain flexibilities that are built in there for principals.
Kobe, did you have a follow-up?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Any further questions?
Hi, good afternoon. Trigger Nation Barbados. I have a question for either the Chief Education Officer or I think Mr. Francis. We wanted an update on the school's repairs project, one, overall, and then two, if you could respond to criticisms that the repairs tend to lapse every single year. So why is it that a week before schools are set to reopen, so many schools have to be repaired at this time? Thank you.
Thank you, Trey. We're just giving Mr. Miller a chance to get into position.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the question. Essentially, what we are doing right now, we are doing some minor works. Now, we would have done most of them. We have completed those major works, including the electrical upgrade. We would have done 7 primary schools in which we did some electrical upgrade that comprised of some civil works, electrical upgrade, as well as some IT upgrade. So we would have completed those. We would have also completed 26 schools under the domestic summer program. Those are works that we normally do during the summer break, in which we cannot normally do them during the school term. So that has been substantially completed. We are now in the phase where we are carrying out industrial cleaning of the schools. We would have cleaned the water tanks and stuff like that. So we are just doing minor works which have no impact on the start of school. So there's no lapse in repairs. We have done more than normal repairs during this time, and given the break that we had, we actually ratcheted up. So for this year we would have spent more than normal, the normal amount of money during the break that we had. So we are pleased with what we have done, and we are ready to start on the 21st.
Trey, did you have another question?
I know that you mentioned increasing the budget for the repairs. If you could say how much to spend.
Domestic summer program, we had a budget about 2.8. We would have spent for the on those 26 schools about 2.8 million. For the electrical upgrade, that budget was about 4.4 million. That has nothing to do with the minor works that is ongoing. That is an ongoing thing. So we have a rolling total. So I can't give you that figure right now, but we can provide that. We can provide that at the end of the repair period.
Are there any further questions?
Just making sure I'm going to add the 2.8 million plus before, or those were already included.
You can add both of them, but that is not the total budget that for what we have. We have other projects ongoing.
Someone else was trying to get in just now. I'm not sure who it was.
Good afternoon, Sharika Griffith from CBC. I was wondering, Minister, if you anticipate any challenges where the teachers are concerned, given that the Union of Teachers was advocating for a delay of at least 2 weeks. Or are you satisfied that you have met most of, if not all of, the things that they were asking for?
Thank you. Over the last while that we have been having discussions with all of our unions, there were a number of concerns that were raised, and the ministry has at every turn sought to respond. There was a question as it relates to random testing, and we have assured them through the Ministry of Health and Wellness, with the support of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, that we will ensure that there is random testing once resources are available, as you heard described earlier. There were concerns about masks and providing such for the unions. The ministry has committed, along with our partners, international partners who have assisted in providing masks in the past, who have agreed that they will continue to work with us so that we can ensure that all schools are provided with extra masks, because we know some students come to school because they couldn't afford the mask. There are some that the string behind the ears will break and they will not be able to use the mask. Some people will spill things on themselves, and for whatever reason it would not be sanitary for them to use the mask. So the ministry has committed that we will make masks available at all schools for those persons who need them, and where through our own investment or through the contributions of our partners, we're able to secure additional masks, we will make sure that they're made available to the teachers and the students and the staff to the extent that we can do so. There were other questions that were raised with regards to the distancing in school, and that matter has been settled by our Ministry of Health and Wellness, which is the lead ministry that will give advice on those protocols. As it relates to the date on which we go back, you would have heard all of the considerations we have made. We have taken into consideration those who said they would want a longer period of time, and we have taken into consideration those who said we can go back right now. And all of those perspectives have to be taken on board. And that is the reason why, while we will officially go back on the 21st, the Chief Education Officer, whom I will ask to expound, if she can, on the flexibility that has been given to principals, how that could possibly work to ensure that all those who can do and those who are unable for whatever legitimate reasons they may have, that we may have some flexibility in how they will be able to cater to the interest of our students.
Dr. Archer-Bradshaw.
Thank you, Minister. I want to make it clear that the Ministry of Education values our teachers and our principals. I wanted to make that clear because I've heard some rumblings in the public with regard that some teachers just don't want to go back into school. And I want to say here this afternoon that all of us want the same thing. We want our children to be back in school safely. We want our staff members to be back in school safely. The Ministry of Education has done all that it can do up until this point to ensure that the plants are safe. However, we have come to understand through discussion with the unions that there are some members who are not quite comfortable with the return to school on the 21st. Because we have an understanding of this pandemic and the morbid sensitivities that persons may have on returning to school, we have allowed for flexibility with regard to the return of some classes or maybe some cohorts on the 21st of February 2022. This will not hinder those persons who are ready to return on the 21st of February 2022. But we are an understanding ministry. We know that our teachers have been working extremely hard for the past 2 years to equip themselves, to facilitate quality instruction, and we commend them for that. We have taken into account what is being said by our unions, and we are flexible enough at this point to allow those teachers the time, that is about 1 week, to settle themselves, to return at a later date.
Sharika, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, Lisa. I also wanted to know, I'm not sure if it was addressed in this press conference, what the vaccination rate is among students and also among staff, both teaching and non-teaching.
That question?
Let me, I would just be very general. The vaccination The vaccination rate for teachers is about 62, between 62 and 65%. Obviously vaccines are available for all adults, so from where I see it, there's no reason why teachers should not be vaccinated. So we would like to see that number well over 80%. And with respect to schools, we have had around 10,000 students, representing half the student population that could be vaccinated, receiving immunization. So the Ministry of Health will continue to promote vaccinations. Ideally, we would like to see it nationally at 70%, but it is not a requirement for the restart of schools at this time. Thank you.
Next question.
Can anyone speak to the transportation situation? How will know that it's back to 100% capacity? How will that be facilitated? How will it be, I guess, controlled to ensure that the students are following the rules?
Chief will take that one.
Thank you for your question. We have been in discussion with the Transport Board, and they have assured us that they have put a number of protocols in place to ensure the safety of our students as they travel on the buses. They have hand sanitizing stations. They will, of course, monitor the students as they're traveling on the buses. I know that there has been a question about whether we will place school monitors on each bus. And I'm sorry to say that we do not have all of the funds available to put a monitor on each bus, but we're calling on all Barbados. We're calling on the public to assist us in monitoring the school children. I remember growing up, and I used to walk to school and I used to walk home. And I can tell you, I could not get to school from home or get from home to school without somebody saying something positive, a word of encouragement, or if I was doing something that I shouldn't have been doing, they would have spoken to me at that point in time. So there's a need for us to engage the community. I'm going to ask us to have that village mentality again. If you see a student on the road and he or she is not doing what he or she is not supposed to do, reach out and say, young man, pull up your mask. Young man, you're too close. Young lady, you're too close there. So that will help us in the monitoring situation. But the Transport Board has a number of protocols in place for the students to follow. I'm going to ask the parents also to consistently talk with your children. Let them know what is acceptable. let them know what is unacceptable. We are all in this together. We can't have a policeman, you know, in every house, or a policeman in every gap, but we can all do our part to make sure that our schools remain safe and to make sure that Barbados remains safe.
Chief, there's a question coming from Kerry Gooding from Loop. I'm not sure if you can take this one regarding uniforms. Parents that can't source school uniforms and shoes, no. What is the alternative? Are we making provisions for that?
I thank you for that question. The ministry had a meeting with principals quite recently, and we were able to raise this matter. We want all of our children to attend schools clad in their uniforms. But we understand the constraints that some parents may have, especially in the midst of this pandemic. We understand some parents may have lost their jobs. Some parents are working reduced hours and may not be able to afford a full uniform for their children or for their wards. Having said that, on a case-by-case basis, the principals will evaluate and allow students to, for example, come to school with soft shoes or what we call sneakers. If they don't have the proper or the school shoes at the point in time, it may be that the child may not be able to fit in the formal uniform, but they can wear their games clothes. If that is the case, then that will be allowed. Or it might be a case that the child can't fit in the games clothes nor the formal school clothes. If that is the case, the child can wear a plain shirt and a jeans pants, you know, a white shirt and a jeans pants. The big picture that we have here is for each and every child to receive an education face to face. And once we keep that in mind, and not only face to face, but face to face safely, and once we keep that in mind, I am sure that we will make all of the right decisions with regard to educating our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions?
I just have one more question regarding the testing. I know that it was mentioned the testing won't be ready for the next 2 weeks, but can we find out, I guess, who will be conducting the testing? Is it oral or oral or nasal? And how will the training be conducted?
As we indicated, the tests are not on island as yet. When they become on island, we will certainly let the public know. We have used the most or the least, the test that is not invasive, which is a nasal test, to do the swabs so that the training will be done. It is non-invasive, and therefore parents can be assured that when their child is tested, it will be done so in a professional manner and a manner that will protect the child who is receiving the test. That's it.
If there are no further questions, I will ask the Minister if she has any closing comments.
Thank you. This return to face-to-face school will be a challenge for some, and it will be easier for others. This ministry has sought to take into consideration as many of the different perspectives as they are. We have consulted with our Ministry of Health and Wellness, and we are convinced that we can do face-to-face school safely and responsibly. The ministry has ensured that even though we have the roadmap which will provide the guidelines, and again I refer you to our Facebook and our Instagram for a look at that roadmap, we recognize that there are people who may still find themselves anxious or challenged. And it is for that reason that we say those whose systems and minds are aligned with a February 21st return to school, we will put no constraints on you other than ensuring that you follow all of the protocols and guidelines that are required. And for those who are, for whatever reasons, legitimate to their circumstance, unable at that time to return, we will ask that those principals inform the ministry by this Friday, so that we are fully apprised of what the situation will be and what the circumstances are that may be constraining them. You will see in the public there are some surveys we have sent to parents and other members of the school community. We ask that you complete those surveys. We have also sent surveys directly to the students' emails for the students to complete those surveys to help us understand how best we can go on a path of continuous improvement to create the kind of environment that will be safe for your children and our children to continue quality education. So we have sought in many ways to consult. We are going to continue to ask for feedback from all of our educational partners. We ask that Barbados put their best effort forward, and that even with what the government has been able to do in terms of getting our plants ready for the return to school, that we all also assume personal responsibility for ensuring that our environments remain safe and conducive to quality education. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Minister. That was the Minister of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, the Honorable K. McConney. Let me also thank the Chief Medical Officer, the Most Honorable Dr. Kenneth George, the Chief Education Officer, Dr. Ramona Archer-Bradshaw, the Director of the Education Technical Management Unit, Mr. Francisco Miller, and also joining us was the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, Mrs Betty Alleyne-Headley, who was also present. Members of the media, as always, and you for joining us. Good afternoon.